Hello economics students, my name is Joe Barnhill. I'm going to be your instructor here for the next 6 weeks. Our first week here, this will kind of get you introduced to economics. You do have the readings, chapters 1 through 4. You're going to have a forum discussion and then homework problems to submit. And then of course your first paper on supply and demand. So try to pick something that's fairly recent and write a brief paper about that. We'll spend a little time kind of discussing things in the textbook. We have our Colander, 8th edition, we'll be using for this course. Colander actually teaches at my wife's college at Middlebury, Vermont. I think you'll really like his style and how he presents economics. But some things I want to point out for this week. The first chapter, kind of an overview of economics, some more of the definitions. You know, we distinguish between micro and macro. This course is mostly a micro course, looks at the decisions that individuals make, firms make. Macro looks at the big picture. So when you're hearing these things about the fiscal cliff and unemployment and GDP coming up this election, that's the macro. One important thing I also want to point out with this chapter, they talk about the difference between marginal benefit and marginal costs. So economists like to look at decisions on the margin. As long as the benefit exceeds some cost, I'll continue to take some action. And then finally, we look at the idea of what we call normative analysis and positive analysis. Positive analysis doesn't necessarily mean it's good. It's just things that we can measure, that we believe in theory. Like if Oprah says that you should buy this book, we should expect the demand curve to shift out. Well, we can state that the unemployment right now in the United States is 8.3%. A normative is a value judgment. Like I could say that I could say Obama is not doing a good job because the unemployment rate is so high. Well, that's an opinion, and that's a normative statement. Chapter 2, you're going to look at the idea of a production possibility curve. A basic model essentially tells us about the law of increasing opportunity cost. Also in the appendix in that chapter 2, review that if it's been a while with the math. Colander calls it the graphish. So it kind of talks about things as slope, and we look at kind of equations, if you will, because you're going to need that for next week's homework. Try to get yourself familiar with maybe setting a basic supply and demand equation equal to each other and solving for price and the quantity. And then chapter 3, just don't spend too much time on that, but they do talk about market externalities, especially negative externalities might be an example of pollution. But the chapter 4 is the meat and potatoes of the economics, and that's the supply and demand. And in this particular chapter, we're looking more at markets. That is the market for motorcycles or the market for oranges. So all the suppliers and all the demanders in that market together. And we're trying to determine where price and quantity is determined in the market. And make sure to distinguish when you read the textbook about a change in quantity demanded or a change in quantity supply, that deals specifically with price. It's a movement along the demand or supply curve. But if it's a factor other than price, that's a shift in the demand or supply curve. Like I gave my example of Oprah. If Oprah says that you need to read that book, that's an actual shift in the demand curve. We should expect the price to go up for that book and more people reading that book. Well, that's it for week 1. I just will give you some brief lectures each week. I'll try to do this every week in a video. But do send me an email if you have any questions. And otherwise, have a great week. Take care.